Hey there, ready to unlock a skill that's becoming more and more valuable these days. We're diving into your notes on deep work. And I have to say, this concept of focusing without distraction on something challenging, it's kind of intriguing, but also kind of daunting.
Absolutely. And this book you're diving into argues that it's this very ability to do deep work that's becoming increasingly rare and thus highly sought after.
So we're talking about a potential competitive edge here, something that could help someone stand out
Exactly.
in any field, really.
Yeah, think about it. How often do you find yourself really immersed in a task, like free from distractions for a good chunk of time?
Honestly, not as often as I like to say I am.
Right.
There's always another notification or email or meeting request that
Yeah.
pops up.
And this book suggests that this constant state of what the author calls shallow work is really hindering our ability to produce truly valuable, game-changing output.
So how do we break free from this shallow work trap? One of the first things you highlighted was a passage about Carl Jung, the psychiatrist.
Right.
He built himself a stone tower to escape distraction so he could focus on his writing. Is that what we all need to do? Become
Well, it's
hermits?
an interesting example, isn't it? And while I don't think any of us are about to build a physical tower anytime soon, I think Jung's commitment to creating this distraction-free environment really highlights a crucial point. Deep work requires intentionality. You have to consciously design your workspace and your schedule in a way that minimizes distractions and carves out dedicated time for focused work.
So it's less about the physical space and more about the mental space, the intentionality behind it.
Yeah,
And that reminds me of another excerpt you pulled out about Woody Allen
right.
sticking to his typewriter, even in today's digital world. And J.K. Rowling famously avoiding social media while she was writing.
Precisely. These examples demonstrate that even in our hyper-connected world, achieving deep work is a matter of choice. It's about being deliberate about how and where you direct your attention. You can create those pockets of focused time, just like these
Yeah.
really accomplished individuals.
And speaking of deliberate choices, in your notes you also mentioned Bill Gates and his Think Weeks.
Oh, yeah.
That's dedication, disappearing to a lake house with nothing but books and time to think.
Right.
It seems like deep work is something you truly have to commit to, almost like a ritual.
It is. The book highlights how high performers across a variety of fields have recognized the power of deep work, and they've integrated it into their routines. And I think Bill Gates' Think Weeks really exemplify that commitment. It's about recognizing that this deep, focused thinking is not a luxury. It's a necessity for producing truly, truly valuable work.
So, if someone like Bill Gates, with all his resources and demands on his time, still prioritizes deep work, it must be important, right?
Absolutely.
What's fascinating to me is this all seems kind of counterintuitive. We live in a world that's obsessed with speed and multitasking and constant connectivity, yet this book suggests that slowing down and focusing deeply might be the key to achieving greater productivity and creating more meaningful work.
It's a great observation, and it speaks to, I think, the core message of the book. Deep work is not about churning out more in less time. It's about creating the space for those breakthrough moments of insight, of innovation that often emerge from prolonged periods of this focused effort. It's quality over quantity.
So, we're not talking about just working harder, but working smarter, more intentionally.
Absolutely.
And you highlighted a section in the book that I think really drives this point home, something about a great restructuring that's happening right now. What is that?
Yeah, it's not even just about working harder, really. It's about working differently. The author of this book argues that technology isn't just changing how we work, but that it's fundamentally reshaping the entire economic landscape. This great restructuring, as they call it, means that the skills that are most valuable are shifting.
So it's not just about keeping up with the latest tech, but about adapting the way we work in a world that's just saturated with technology. What does that even mean for someone who wants to thrive in this new landscape?
Well, it means that the ability to do deep work,
Hmm.
to think critically, to solve really complex problems, and produce truly innovative work, that's going to be a major differentiator. The book highlights like three types of individuals who will thrive in this new environment.
Mm.
Those who can work effectively with intelligent machines, those who are superstars in their field, and those who have access to capital.
So deep work isn't just some abstract concept. We're talking about something with real-world implications for how we navigate this evolving job market. And,
Yeah.
you highlighted a passage about a guy named Jason Ben. You even called it like a real-world example of deep work in action. Tell me about him.
Yeah, so Jason Ben's story, it shows how deep work can be a really powerful tool for professional growth. He was working as a financial analyst, a field that's becoming increasingly vulnerable to automation, and he realized that he needed to level up his skills to stay ahead of the curve, so to speak.
So he took action. Instead of panicking about being replaced by robots,
Yeah.
what did he do?
He decided to learn to code,
Wow.
which is a skill that is very in demand and requires, as you can imagine, pretty intense focus and dedication to master, a perfect example of deep work. And by dedicating consistent focused time to learning this new skill, Jason was able to transform his career trajectory. He went from being someone replaceable to someone highly sought after.
That's an inspiring story, but also, like, incredibly challenging.
It is.
Learning to code, mastering any complex skill, really, while the rest of the world seems intent on distracting us. How is that even possible? And the book also mentioned that he managed to do this quickly. Like, he went from replaceable to highly valuable in a short span of time.
You've hit on, I think, a crucial point, which is that our environment is saturated with distractions that actively work against deep work. And that's why this book really emphasizes the importance of being intentional, disciplined, about creating the space for this kind of work. And you're right, it can be challenging, but the rewards are significant. Think of it like this. Imagine two people are both trying to learn a new language. One person kind of dabbles, casually picks it up and puts it down whenever they feel like it. The other person dedicates a specific time every single day, eliminates distractions, and really immerses themselves in that learning process. Who do you think is going to achieve fluency faster?
The one who's treating it like a priority,
Right.
who's like fully present during those learning sessions.
Exactly. And that's where the real power of deep work comes in, I think. This focused, deliberate practice. It allows you to compress that learning curve, so to speak, so you're mastering new skills, achieving your goals more efficiently. And this principle applies not just to like learning to code, but to any field, any endeavor where you really want to excel. Just like Jason Ben, you can leverage deep work to gain a competitive edge, whatever your field may be. But this does require that we recognize and then overcome what the book calls the principle of least resistance.
The principle of least resistance, what is that?
So it means that in the absence of clear feedback mechanisms, we tend to default to whatever feels easiest in the moment. And let's face it, checking your phone, scrolling through social media, responding to that not-so-urgent email, those things are far easier, far more instantly gratifying than deep, focused work.
It's like our brains are almost wired to seek out distraction, you know?
Absolutely.
You're right. It takes a conscious effort to resist those easy dopamine hits and choose deep work instead.
Yeah.
And speaking of environments that make deep work challenging, you flagged a section in the book about open plan offices. And I've always found those to be incredibly distracting. How can anyone possibly achieve a state of deep work when they're surrounded by noise and movement?
It's a valid concern. It's something that the book addresses in detail.
Okay.
And it turns out that the popular notion of these open offices fostering creativity and collaboration is a bit more nuanced than we've been led to believe.
So those like spontaneous interactions by the water cooler, they aren't actually like the magic bullet for innovation.
Well, they can be helpful.
Hmm.
But the book argues that while those serendipitous encounters can spark ideas, turning those sparks into tangible results still requires deep work. That ability to disconnect from distractions, to delve into these complex problems and synthesize information, it's crucial for turning those initial sparks of inspiration into something truly valuable.
So it's about striking that balance, right? You need those spaces for collaboration, but you also need those quiet areas where you can actually focus.
Yeah, the book actually uses the analogy of a hub and spoke model. You need that hub, like you said, for interaction and exchanging ideas, but then those spokes are where the deep work happens, where you can actually like flesh out those ideas without distractions.
Right. Otherwise, it's just brainstorming without any follow-through.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about how valuable deep work is, especially in this evolving economic landscape, but it's also becoming increasingly difficult to achieve with all the distractions around us.
Right.
So I'm sure our listeners are eager to learn how they can actually incorporate deep work into their own lives. You had highlighted a section in the book about rules for deep work. What stood out to you?
One of the most practical takeaways for me was the emphasis on scheduling deep work like it's an important meeting,
Okay.
like actually putting it on your calendar.
Yeah.
And deciding on a philosophy. They talk about like monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, journalistic, just, whatever works best for your lifestyle and your work style. But I think the key takeaway is to be intentional about blocking off that time and treating it with the same level of commitment as you would any other important appointment.
So it's about being proactive, not just hoping that you'll magically stumble upon a few hours of uninterrupted time. You have to treat it with the same seriousness as you would like a meeting with your boss or a client.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't be afraid to experiment. Like the book encourages people to try different approaches and see what best suits their personality, their work habits. If you're a morning person, maybe carve out those early hours for deep work. If you kind of hit your stride later in the day, reserve those evening hours for focused effort.
So there's no one-size-fits-all approach here.
Right.
It's about customization. What about dealing with the inevitable distractions, though? I mean, the authors seem to have some pretty strong opinions about social media, for example, and its impact on our ability to focus.
Yeah, he advocates for what he calls a craftsman approach to online tools.
Okay.
Essentially, it's about being really mindful of how you're spending your time online and asking yourself, does this tool actually contribute to my most important goals?
hmm
If not, be ruthless, cut it out, or limit your usage.
That's easier said than done these days, though, isn't it? We've become so accustomed to being constantly connected. Any advice on how to break free from that always-on mentality?
Well, they suggest a digital detox,
hmm
just taking a break from social media and other distracting websites for like a set period of time, even if it's just for a day or two.
Yeah.
I think you'd be surprised at how much time and mental energy you regain when you're not constantly checking notifications and scrolling.
Yeah, it's like giving your brain a chance to like reset and rediscover what it's like to actually focus on a single task without interruption.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming that control over your attention and directing it towards what truly matters. And I think it's important to remember that deep work isn't just about like productivity for the sake of productivity. It's about creating space for the type of work that brings you fulfillment, a sense of meaning.
That really resonates with me. It's about more than just checking items off a to-do list, right? It's about engaging in work that challenges you, stimulates your creativity, allows you to really make an impact.
Absolutely.
And that feeling, that sense of accomplishment, like you've created something truly valuable through deep, focused effort. That's got to be an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something worth striving for.
This has been a really interesting conversation, definitely challenging my own assumptions about productivity and the way I approach my own work.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder for all of us that in this world it's increasingly dominated by distraction and superficiality. The ability to do deep work really is a superpower.
It is.
It's about taking control, mastering your craft, and creating work that matters.
And ultimately, isn't that what we all want? To do work that we find meaningful and fulfilling.
I think so.
Well, this has been great, a great reminder for us all to slow down, eliminate those distractions, and really embrace the power of deep work. Thanks for diving into this with me.
Yeah, happy to be here.